Story 1. I wasn't the kind of person who paid attention to old stories or omens. Still ain't, really. But there's one thing I saw back in 2019 when I was living out near Kobar, and I haven't said much about it. Not properly, because when I try, I get that same cold feeling in my chest I had that day. I'd moved out there after losing my job in Sydney. Needed to clear my head, get away from people, noise, all of it. I took a caretaker job on a mostly abandoned sheep station about 50 k's out of town. The place was half falling down, but it had running water, a generator, and a decent view of the ridges. I liked it well enough. That winter was brutal. The drought had the soil cracked like pottery, and the damn flies were worse than usual. You'd find emus collapsed out by dry riverbeds, kangaroo carcasses stuck in dried-up dams, their legs locked in mid-stride, like they were still trying to get away from something. One afternoon, I decided to hike out past the boundary fence, just to see what was left of a stock route I'd found on an old map in the shed. It was maybe 4 p.m. when I set off, sun still high but already starting to bleed orange. I had my pack, water, a cheap old field camera I'd found in a drawer, and a good pair of boots. I walked maybe 2 hours, didn't see a single living thing except a lone wedge-tailed eagle circling low. Then just as I came over this low ridge, I saw it. A kangaroo. Big one. Easily a red male. It was maybe 20 meters off, standing dead still, facing me. That wasn't what stopped me, though. What stopped me was its face. It was white. Not albino, just the face. But it wasn't even all white. It looked like a skull. That's the best way I can explain it. Like the fur had been bleached into the shape of a skull, forehead, nose bridge, cheeks, dead white, and then darker fur around the eyes and jaw. Like it had sunk its face into something, pulled it out, and left a perfect print of a skull. It didn't move. I stood there, blinked, looked again. I thought maybe it had dipped its head into dried clay, but that didn't make sense. The markings were too clean, symmetrical. I even muttered to myself, must be mud or something. I took a few steps forward, quietly, slowly. It didn't flinch, just stared. Then I felt this weird thing, like a memory, but not mine. I saw it, in my head, face down in deep mud, kicking, dying slow. I swear to God I could hear the sound of the suction pulling at its chest as it struggled. Not a vision exactly, more like a thought dropped into my brain that didn't belong to me. I shook it off, told myself I was just tired, snapped a photo, though I never found it on the camera later, and took another step forward. That's when it dropped onto all fours. I've never seen a kangaroo do that, not like that. They don't go on all fours like dogs, but this one did, shoulders dipped, head low, that skull-marked face now tilted toward me like it was sniffing the air. I froze. Then it let out this noise, like a low gurgle, deep and wet, like someone choking. I backed up slowly at first. Then it took a step toward me. Not a hop, a step. Front paws pressing into the dirt like hands. It wasn't moving right. The hind legs bent wrong, like it had forgotten how to use them properly. "Oi!" I shouted. I didn't know why. Maybe I thought I could scare it off. It didn't flinch. Then it stood upright again, and I saw its eyes. They weren't black like a normal kangaroo. They were glazed, gray, milky, but not blind. I knew it could see me, felt it. That was when I turned and ran. Not smart, I know, but every instinct I had screamed to move. I didn't look back until I hit the ridge again, legs burning, heart trying to punch through my ribs. When I stopped and looked, it was gone. The whole clearing below was empty. I didn't stop moving until I got back to the homestead. Locked the door behind me even though I was alone for 50 kilometers in any direction. Sat there with a torch in one hand and the camera in the other until the sun came up. Next day I checked the photos. Every picture came out fine except that one. Just a blur of brown and red. No shape, no kangaroo. Like the camera refused to acknowledge what I'd seen. I didn't tell anyone for a few days. Then I brought it up at the pub one night in town. Just said I'd seen a roo with a white face. Not even the creepy stuff, just that. Whole room went quiet. One old guy said, "You sure about that, mate?" And I nodded. Another guy stood up, muttered something about white face bringing dust and death, then walked out. Bartender pulled me aside after and said, "Best not to talk about things you don't understand out here. People get twitchy, especially these days." That's when I learned about the old stories. Not even Dreamtime ones, really. More like warnings. They said sometimes spirits showed up as animals, messengers, omens. The white-faced kangaroo meant suffering, drought, sometimes death. The part that rattled me most? They said if you see it and it sees you, something changes. Something gets taken. I laughed it off then. Tried to, anyway. But I haven't seen another animal in that area since. No roos, no birds. Even the flies backed off. It's like the land just stopped breathing after that. I left 2 weeks later, packed up and moved inland, near Dubbo. Haven't been back. Haven't talked about it again until now. Story 2, I've lived my whole life in Blanding, Utah. Small, tight-knit, lots of desert, lots of rock. My family owns a little auto shop off Highway 191. Nothing fancy, but it pays the bills. I've done every kind of outdoor thing you can do out here. Climbing, hiking, hunting. You learn to respect the land. You also learn the desert keeps its secrets. This happened last spring. I was hiking solo out near Cedar Mesa, in that open stretch between Mule Canyon and the Comb Ridge. If you've been out there, you know it's quiet. Too quiet sometimes. Just sagebrush, wind, and those huge slabs of red sandstone. The kind of place where you can hear your own heartbeat if you stop walking. I left early in the morning, planned to do an 8-mile loop and be back before dark. Around late afternoon, I was on my way back. The sun was low, that golden hour light stretching shadows, and I remember thinking how weird the silence felt. Like even the bugs and birds had shut up. Then I saw them. 2 coyotes on the next ridge over, maybe 100 yards away. Nothing unusual at first. They were trotting along like coyotes do, looking for scraps or whatever. I slowed down and just watched. Then one of them stopped, real sudden. The other kept going, but this one turned its head, like it had heard something. I stood still, barely breathing, and then it stood up. Not like perched up a bit or reared back. No, I mean it stood up, full on its hind legs, straight spine, shoulders relaxed, arms, not front legs, hanging down at its sides. I remember thinking, that's not how anything should move. I didn't move. I just stared. It turned its head toward me. I swear to God, it looked at me. And not in the way animals look at you when they're trying to figure out what you are. No, this was different. Like it already knew. Like it was thinking. I didn't know what to do. My body went cold. It was too far to see a face clearly, but I could tell it wasn't shaped right anymore. The head was still like a coyote, but the posture, Jesus, it moved like a man. Not stiff, not clumsy, smooth, casual, like someone taking a stroll after dinner. It walked down the far side of the ridge and disappeared behind the rocks. I stood there for maybe 5 full minutes, completely still. My mouth was dry, my skin felt tight, like every hair was standing on end. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until I gasped. I should have left then. I wanted to leave, but the trail back ran right toward the ridge it had disappeared behind. I had no choice but to walk that way. Every step felt wrong. I kept looking behind me, to the sides, scanning for movement. When I finally made it past that ridge and nothing jumped out at me, I practically sprinted the last 2 miles back to my truck. Didn't stop, didn't drink water, nothing. Just got in, locked the doors, and drove. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it standing there, watching, not curious, not scared, just aware, like it was waiting for something, like it knew me. Next day, I called my uncle, who used to work in Navajo Nation law enforcement. He's seen some weird shit. I didn't even finish explaining before he cut me off. "You need to forget that," he said. "Don't talk about it. Don't go back there." I asked him what he thought it was, and he didn't answer for a long time. When he finally did, he just said, "They're not supposed to walk like us. When they do, you leave them alone." That was it. I haven't been back to that ridge. I won't. Story 3. I'm not the type to go around talking about supernatural crap. I'm 29 now, living in Boise, Idaho, and working a boring desk job in property management. Nothing weird has ever really happened to me before or since, but there's one night I still think about. One night that doesn't fit anywhere in my understanding of how the world works. This happened when I was 19, back when I was in college. My roommate Evan and I were weirdos. Not in a bad way, just insomniac nerds who liked walking around town when it was dead quiet. We weren't drinking or high or anything. We just liked the emptiness, like the city belonged to us for a few hours. So it's like 2 a.m. on a Thursday. We were wandering around downtown, somewhere near that old bar with the rusted fire escape. We're walking past this bakery that always smelled like cinnamon rolls, and I stop. There's something in the gutter. A cat. It was dead, very obviously dead. Calico. White body, big brown patch on the side, and a splash of orange on its face. Rigor had set in. The thing looked stiff as a board, and its head was cocked at a strange angle like it had been hit hard. There was this slick smear of something dark under its skull. Blood, oil, whatever. I remember Evan saying, "That thing's fresh. Probably got clipped tonight." We didn't touch it, just kind of looked at it for a few seconds and kept walking. We hit the park, hung out on the swings, talked about dumb stuff, video games some girl Evan liked. I remember it was cold but not freezing. Just one of those dry, hollow nights where every sound feels like it's been vacuum sealed. On the way back, maybe 45 minutes later, a car passed us and lit up the street. That's when we saw it, a cat crossing the road up ahead. It wasn't just a cat, it was the cat. Same colors, same pattern, even that weird blotch on the face. It moved slowly across the road and disappeared into a shadow between two buildings. I remember Evan stopping dead and saying, "No fucking way." We both walked faster, not quite running, and got to the spot where we'd seen the dead cat. It was gone, but the greasy smear on the concrete, still there. No blood trail, no tire marks, nothing. Just that dark smear and an empty gutter. We tried to come up with a rational explanation. Maybe someone moved it. Maybe it wasn't dead. Maybe we imagined it. But both of us had seen it. We knew it had been dead, and that should have been the end of it. Just a weird night, something creepy to tell people for fun. But the cat came back. It started popping up in places it shouldn't have been. Once, Evan swore it was sitting on the stairs outside our dorm at 3 a.m., staring at him when he came back from a party. Another time, it darted across the quad in broad daylight, always just far enough away that we couldn't get a good look, but close enough to see the same calico markings. It started to feel like a joke, or maybe we were just messing with each other without admitting it. But then our RA left us a note saying she needed to speak with us. We thought we were in trouble for the noise or something, but when we got to her door, she didn't even say hello. Just walked with us to our room. She opened the door, looked around for 2 seconds, then said, "Oh wow, there's no way you're keeping a cat in here." "Sorry." We stared at her, confused. "What cat?" Evan asked. "One of the grounds guys said they saw a white cat with orange and brown spots in your window last night." I felt my stomach drop. I looked at Evan. He looked at me. "We don't have a cat," I said. She narrowed her eyes like she didn't believe us, but eventually just nodded and left. We tried laughing it off again. Maybe someone had a similar cat. Maybe the groundskeeper was drunk. But deep down, we were both starting to feel it. The cat wasn't a cat, not anymore. Then came the last night. It was about 3 weeks after the first sighting. Evan had gone home for the weekend, so I was alone in the dorm. I stayed up watching YouTube videos and finally tried to crash around 3 a.m. I was just drifting off when I heard a sound. A soft thump, like something landing lightly on the floor. I opened my eyes and there it was. The cat, sitting on the corner of my desk. It wasn't solid. That's the part that still haunts me. It was there, but not completely. The edges of it shimmered like heat waves rising off pavement. I could see the wood grain of the desk right through its fur, but I could also see the orange patch on its face, the brown spot on the side. It stared at me, not like a regular cat, not curious or playful, just still, dead still. Its mouth opened. It didn't meow. It made this guttural, wet noise like air being sucked through mud, like something trying to breathe through a hole in the ground. I couldn't move. I don't know how long it lasted. A second? A minute? Then it jumped down and vanished. No scamper, no sound. Just gone. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I didn't tell Evan right away. I didn't tell anyone. Because how the hell do you explain that? Story 4. It's been 4 years since I lived with Jess in that little house just outside Monroe, Michigan. I still drive past it sometimes when I visit my brother. It's rented out now. Some family with kids, I think. They don't know what happened in there. Hell, I barely understand it myself. Jess and I had been together for 3 years when we moved in. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, low ceilings, and a creaky porch that leaned a little too much to one side. But the backyard was big, and that's what mattered to her because of Duke, her boxer, big guy, sweet but protective. Even as he got sicker, he followed her from room to room like a shadow. Cancer took him in the end. Jess stayed with him until the vet finished the injection. She didn't say a word on the drive home. The first night after we put Duke down, she left his leash on the doorknob. I didn't say anything. It stayed there for days. 3 nights later, I had the dream. I don't usually remember mine, but this one stuck. In the dream, I was in the kitchen pouring coffee, and Duke trotted in like nothing had ever happened. He didn't look sick. His coat was shiny again, his eyes clear. He glanced up at me, then walked straight through the archway into the living room. I remember yelling, "Jess, did you see that?" She didn't answer. I turned and saw her staring at me like I was crazy. I woke up sweating. My chest felt tight. My mouth was dry. "Are you okay?" Jess mumbled, half asleep. I didn't answer. I just stared at the ceiling until the sun came up. The second time was worse. It was maybe 4 days after that dream. We'd gone to bed around midnight. Jess had a shift early, so she was out cold almost immediately. I laid there longer, scrolling through my phone, trying to keep my mind off the dream. I must have dozed off at some point, because what happened next? I don't think I was fully awake when it started. You ever have a sleep so deep you forget where you are? It was like that, but I wasn't dreaming this time. I felt it. Something heavy landed on the bed. Not a bump or a thud. I mean like a living weight. The kind that shifts and breathes. The mattress dipped under it. I couldn't move at first, not out of fear. I was paralyzed, like my brain hadn't caught up to my body yet. And then, it walked up my legs. I felt the pads of its feet pressing into my thighs one at a time. Slow, deliberate. I thought maybe I was dreaming again, but then the weight settled on my chest. It was warm. I could feel the pressure in my ribs, like something solid had just laid across me. Not a blanket, not a hallucination. Real weight. I tried to open my eyes, but they felt glued shut. I don't know how long I struggled. My heart was pounding, ears ringing. I kept thinking, it's just a dream. Just a dream. Wake up. Wake up. When I finally managed to rip my eyes open, the room was pitch black, except for the window where the streetlight cast a faint glow across the bed. That's when I saw it. A silhouette, dog-shaped, sitting right on top of me, motionless. I couldn't breathe. I could feel its chest rising and falling against mine, the warmth of its breath on my neck. It was staring straight at me. I could see the outline of the ears, the snout, the arched back. It was Duke, but not exactly. Something was wrong. The shape was familiar, but the stillness wasn't. He didn't move like a dog. He didn't twitch. He didn't blink. He just sat there, pressing into my chest like he was holding me down. I tried to call Jess, but no sound came out. My lips moved, nothing else. Then slowly, so slowly, the silhouette began to fade, like smoke dispersing in water. First the head, then the torso, until the weight lifted all at once, like someone had yanked it straight off me. The bed bounced lightly. The room was dead silent. I bolted upright. Jess didn't stir. Her breathing was steady, completely undisturbed. I looked at the foot of the bed. Nothing. I reached over and turned on the lamp. Still nothing. But the bed, the indentation on the blanket, it was still there. Shaped like something had just gotten up. I stared at it for a long time. Didn't touch it. Eventually, I lay back down. but I didn't sleep again that night. Neither did I the next. Jess asked me that morning if something was wrong. I told her I'd had a nightmare. She offered to make coffee and kiss me on the cheek. She didn't see the bags under my eyes. Or maybe she did and didn't ask. I never told her what really happened. What could I even say? A few weeks later, we moved out. Not because of what I saw. We were already planning to move closer to her new job in Toledo. But I didn't argue when she suggested leaving early. I was done with that house. Done with that room. Story 5. I never liked the woods behind my place. I didn't grow up in the country. I was born in Jersey and moved to New Hampshire for work. A dispatch job in Claremont that had me clocking out at 1 a.m. most nights. My apartment was cheap and tucked into a thick cluster of trees off a dirt road that felt like it was carved into the middle of nowhere. The landlord said deer would wander through now and then, but I never saw any. Just heard twigs snapping and branches moving at night while I tried to sleep. At first, I thought it was animals. Then I started seeing things. I'd be walking up to my front door after work and feel something watching me from the woods. Not the normal, there's wildlife around kind of watching. This felt deliberate, human almost, but wrong. I'd glance over my shoulder and see tall, thin silhouettes standing between the trees. I remember once dropping my keys because my hands were shaking so badly, and when I looked back up, one of those shapes was closer, just standing there still. No face, no eyes, just a shadow shaped like a person. I told myself it was the dark playing tricks. Lack of sleep. Maybe someone lurking around trying to scare me. It got so bad I'd sit in the car with the doors locked for 5 minutes before I could force myself out and sprint to the porch. I didn't tell anyone. Felt stupid. Then came that night. The night I still can't explain, and I don't try to anymore. It was late October, chilly but not yet snowing. Around 1:20 a.m., I was driving back home, following the same winding road that cut through the forest. No streetlights, just my headlights carving a tunnel through pitch black. I came up to this sharp bend I always hated. The trees crowd the edge so tight it's like they're leaning in to swallow the road. As I slowed for the curve, my headlights swept across the trees, and that's when I saw it. There, standing just inside the tree line, was a stag, but not just any stag. This thing was enormous, taller than any deer I'd ever seen. Its antlers thick and wide like a crown. And it was silver, not white, not gray, silver like molten metal catching moonlight, and it shimmered faintly like a reflection on water. Every hair on my body stood up, not from fear exactly, but something deeper, like I was in the presence of something ancient. It didn't move, just stared down at me with these eyes that weren't quite animal eyes. I swear to God they were intelligent, not curious, not aggressive, just knowing, like it saw me and everything that had been following me. I stopped the car right in the middle of the road. My hands were locked on the wheel. I didn't breathe, and the weirdest thing, the second I saw that stag, everything else, the fear, the panic, that horrible feeling of being watched, it vanished, gone, like someone cut a string. I felt calm in a way I hadn't in weeks. I blinked. That's it. Just blinked, like anyone would. When I opened my eyes, it was gone. Not like it ran off. It was just gone. No sound, no movement, like it had never been there. I left the car idling, got out, and stood at the edge of the woods where I'd seen it. There wasn't a single footprint. The leaves weren't even disturbed. And the woods felt clean, like they'd been scrubbed of whatever darkness had been living in them. I don't know how long I stood there before I finally walked to my door without looking back once. I slept that night without waking up. For the first time in a long time, there was no scratching at my window, no shapes between the trees. After that, the shadow people were gone. I never saw them again. I've tried to rationalize it. Maybe I hallucinated the stag. Maybe my brain needed a way to protect itself, and that was it. But I know what I saw. That thing was real, and it wasn't normal. It felt old, powerful, not a ghost, not a hallucination, something else. A few weeks later, I brought it up to this older guy at a local bait shop when we were talking about weird wildlife. I didn't go into details, just mentioned seeing something big and silver. He got real quiet. Then told me a story his grandfather used to tell about a forest guardian, something that showed up when people were being haunted. Said it came once, then never again. You saw him? The guy asked, dead serious. Then you're lucky. Whatever was following you, it's gone now. I moved out the next month, not because I was scared, because I felt like whatever debt I owed to that place was paid. Like I'd been spared something I wasn't supposed to survive. Sometimes I still get the urge to drive back there, just to see. Story 6. I live in Zanesville, Ohio. Grew up here. Not a whole lot happens, and maybe that's why what I'm about to tell you still messes with my head. I don't share it much. People always give you that look like you've either lost your mind or you're making stuff up. But I swear to God, this happened. I wasn't alone either. There were 5 of us. We all saw the same thing. None of us talk about it anymore. We were 16 back then, all of us. It was early July and hot, the kind of thick summer heat that never fully goes away, even at night. My buddy Seth's family had this small camper parked at a private campground in southern Ohio, somewhere near Chillicothe. Real quiet spot. You had to drive about 20 minutes down a gravel road just to get in. That night we were just messing around. Played cards, roasted hot dogs, snuck a few beers from Seth's dad's cooler. Around 11 p.m., someone got the idea to sneak down to the pool at the front of the campground. It was locked, but we figured we could hop the fence and swim for a bit. No big deal. So we start walking. The road runs through a thick patch of woods before it opens up near the pool area. No streetlights or anything, just our flashlights. It was dark as hell. I was up front with Seth, and we're just talking about stupid stuff, when Seth suddenly stops and puts his arm out in front of me. Dude, what is that? I looked where he was pointing. About 60, maybe 70 yards up the road, something moved. At first I thought it was a big dog, but then it came out into the open stretch of the road, and we all froze. It was a cat, a big one, like mountain lion big, solid black. You could see the shape of the tail, long and dragging low. Its head was down, shoulders hunched like it was stalking something. It didn't look like it saw us. No way, I whispered. That's a panther or something. There's no panthers in Ohio, Jared said from behind us. We just stood there, flashlights off, watching it. It padded halfway across the road, and then it stood up. Not like stood on its back legs to swipe at something like a bear. It stood up straight, full-on upright. I swear on my life, it rose like a human would. The front legs became arms, kind of long and too thin for something that size. Its body stretched out and straightened, and it just walked. Smooth, effortless. It didn't run or lurch or act injured. It just walked into the woods, upright, arms at its sides. Nobody said anything for a few seconds. I think we were all waiting for someone to laugh, to say we'd imagined it, but nobody did. What the fuck was that? Kyle finally said. His voice cracked a little. I don't know, Seth stammered. You all saw that, right? Yeah, Jared said. It walked. That cat walked into the woods like a dude. We all just stood there. Part of me wanted to turn around and get the hell out of there. But we were 16 and stupid and scared just enough to think we were brave. So instead of leaving, we did the dumbest thing we could have done. We went toward it. We moved slowly, all flashlights on now, lighting up the spot where it crossed. You could still see the prints where the dust had been disturbed on the road. Don't go in the woods, I told them. We can check here, but we're not going in. No one argued. We stood near the edge of the tree line, shining the beams between the trunks, trying to see anything. A shape, a shadow, anything that didn't belong. But there was nothing, just silence and the occasional chirp of a bug. That's when the smell hit. It was sharp and rotting, like dead meat left in a hot car. It came out of nowhere, and it was strong. Kyle gagged and turned away, covering his nose. Jesus, what is that? We backed off immediately. The stench didn't follow. It just lingered near the edge of the woods like something had died deep in there. I think we should go, I said. Everyone agreed real fast. We didn't run, but we walked fast, real fast. The entire time I kept looking over my shoulder. Nothing followed us. No noise, no movement. We never made it to the pool. When we got back to the camper, no one spoke for a while. Just sat there in that weird silence where everyone's processing the same thing, but doesn't want to be the first to admit it happened. "What did we see?" Seth finally asked. "Like, what the hell was that thing?" Jared didn't answer. No one did. I think we were all trying to make sense of it, but there's no making sense of something like that. Over the next few days, we told a few people, mostly older family members. Seth told his uncle, who was a hunter. The guy just shrugged and said maybe it was a bear with mange. But bears don't move like that, and they don't stand up and walk into the woods like a person. We stopped bringing it up after a while. It was easier not to talk about it. A couple of the guys started saying maybe it was just dark, maybe our eyes played tricks on us. But that's bullshit. I know what I saw. We all saw it. Seth's family still owns the camper, but I haven't gone back to that campground since. Even now, nearly 10 years later, I still get a cold feeling thinking about it. That thing, whatever it wasn't supposed to be here. It looked like it belonged in some nightmare or folktale, not in Ohio woods. I've tried searching online. Black Panthers walking upright, Appalachian folklore, shapeshifters. There's stories out there, but nothing that really matches. Nothing that feels exactly right, except maybe one. One article mentioned something called a skinwalker, some Navajo legend, a witch that can transform into animals. People say they mimic animals to lure you in. Sometimes they stand up when they think no one's watching. I don't know if that's what it was. I'm not native, and I don't want to step on stuff I don't understand. All I know is what I saw. Story 7. It was a Wednesday, early January, and the roads were locked up with ice. We'd had over 8 inches of snow the night before, and everything was dead silent outside. I was staying at my girlfriend Dana's place, out in rural West Virginia. You could walk a mile in any direction and not hit a neighbor. Thick woods on every side. No traffic, no cell service. Just us, the house, and the cold. We were laying in her bed that morning, still wrapped in blankets. No work, no school. Her room faced the backyard, and she had these wide old windows that fogged up at the corners. I remember Dana was halfway asleep when I heard it. A voice, right outside the window. "Get down. They're gonna see you if you don't get down." It was clear. Male, whispering, but not to me, like he was scolding someone. I sat up immediately. Dana blinked at me, confused. "What?" I didn't answer. I turned and looked out the window. There was a man walking by, just casually walking past the house toward the garage. He was bundled in a heavy coat, and there were 3 dogs with him, medium-sized, black and gray, moving in a weird formation. They weren't barking or sniffing around, just sticking close to him like trained animals. I don't remember thinking clearly. I just moved, grabbed my handgun from the nightstand and went for the back door. Dana was behind me asking what was going on, but I didn't explain. I opened the door and stepped out fast, expecting to confront someone, but there was no one there. I looked around the yard, nothing but snow and trees and the absolute silence of a cold forest morning. But here's the thing. There were footprints, clear as day, human boots, and paw prints all over. They had passed right by the window and walked straight toward the garage. I followed them without even thinking. The prints led down the side of the house, out past the shed, and into the tree line. No hesitation, just a straight path, like they knew exactly where they were going. I followed them about 100 yards into the woods. That's when I noticed something that made me stop. The human footprints stopped, just ended, like he'd vanished mid-step. But the dog prints, they kept going, not just in one direction either. They scattered. I crouched down to look closer. The snow was fresh, untouched except for this trail. The man's prints went up to that point, then nothing. Just paw prints, continuing on deeper into the trees. No broken branches, no signs of struggle, just gone. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, trying to make sense of it. Then something caught my eye to the left. More paw prints, but these weren't connected to the trail I'd followed. These ones were coming toward the house, from deeper in the forest. They curved in and led back the same way I had just walked, like a separate set, maybe a second group. I followed them cautiously, and about 25 yards from the house, human footprints appeared in the snow. Again, out of nowhere, just started suddenly, like whoever it was had appeared there. Same boot tread, same stride, but no origin. I followed them toward the front of the house, thinking maybe they'd exited that way. But once again, they just stopped. Dead. No path leading out, no tire tracks, no animal tracks, just silence. I circled the house 3 times. I checked every outbuilding, every door. No sign of anyone. Dana met me at the back step, shivering in her robe. What happened? Who was out there? I didn't answer right away. I walked her over to the window where we'd been laying. The prints were still there, clear as day. A man and 3 dogs walking right past us. I pointed. That's who was out there. She looked. I watched her face shift from confused to disturbed. I heard him talk, I said. He said, "Get down. They're gonna see you if you don't get down." To who? She asked. I didn't know. That afternoon we tried to track the prints again, but snow started falling heavy around noon and wiped everything out. Whatever happened that morning was gone, like it had never occurred. But I couldn't stop thinking about it, because here's the part that really shook me. Those dogs weren't normal. The way they moved, they didn't sniff or wander or act like dogs. They walked like they were part of him, like shadows, not animals. And when I followed the trail into the woods and saw the man's prints disappear, it wasn't like he ran or jumped or was picked up. It was like he stopped existing. Same for where the second set began near the house. Just a sudden presence, as if something had come from the forest in the shape of a man and left again in the form of something else. Dana's place already gave me a weird feeling, but after that morning, I stopped staying the night. I'd still come by, but not after dark. Something about that house in those woods didn't feel empty anymore. Story 8. I'm not sure if this is going to make sense to anyone, but I swear on my life, it happened exactly the way I'm about to tell you. My name's Dylan. I live in a studio apartment just outside of Philadelphia, near Germantown. It's an old building, 1920s, creaky floors, radiator heat, thin walls. I moved in 2 years ago because the rent was cheap and I didn't have many options. I work night shifts doing building maintenance at a university, so I sleep during the day most of the time. That's probably what started all this. Sleep paralysis had been hitting me on and off since college. Usually nothing serious, just waking up frozen, unable to move, heart pounding, the usual. But starting last summer, every time I had one of those episodes, I began seeing a cat in my room. I don't own a cat. At first, I figured my brain was just filling in the blanks while I was in that weird half-sleep state. The cat never did anything threatening. It was always just there, scratching the edge of my bed, licking its paw on the windowsill, walking across my chest and curling up beside me. Just a plain, black cat. No collar, no glowing eyes or anything cliche like that. But what got me wasn't what it did. It was the fact that it kept showing up. Every single time. Same cat, same movements, same look at me, right before everything snapped back to normal. One time I thought, okay, maybe it's just a loop my brain's stuck in. Like a visual echo. But then came the night that ruined everything. It was around 4 a.m. I'd just gotten off work and was too tired to shower, so I crashed fully dressed on top of my blanket. I remember waking up, or thinking I did, and not being able to move. I was on my back staring at the ceiling. My eyes burned from how dry they felt, like I hadn't blinked in hours. And then I heard it, the sound of claws dragging across wood. Slowly, deliberately. It was coming from the nightstand to my right. I tried to turn my head, but of course I couldn't. I already knew what I'd see. That damn cat. I could hear it now. Low little grunts and the soft thump of its body jumping up onto the nightstand. I shifted my eyes as far as they could go to the right. It was him, sitting there, tail twitching, eyes locked on me. That part wasn't new, but this time, it felt different. He wasn't grooming himself or ignoring me like he usually did. He was staring, motionless, ears stiff, like he was listening for something, or someone. And then slowly, he turned his head toward the closet door. That door had been shut when I fell asleep. It was open now, not wide, just barely enough to notice the dark crack between the door and the frame. But I could see it, and the cat saw it too. He got up, arched his back, and hissed, quiet but sharp. His tail fluffed up and curled. I felt my body trying to jerk, trying to get up, but nothing worked. I couldn't even scream. My mouth was open, but no sound came out. I started to panic. My eyes were burning from not blinking, tears running sideways across my cheeks. My chest was locked like something heavy was sitting on it. The closet door creaked. Only a few inches, but I heard it. I swear to God, something moved inside. A shift, a scrape, like long fingernails dragging against wood. The cat hissed again, louder this time, and jumped off the nightstand. But instead of running away, he walked to the foot of my bed and just stood there, watching the closet. Then the worst part. Something stepped out. It didn't walk. It sort of unfolded, like it had been crouched or hanging and had to uncoil itself. It was tall, wrong-looking, too thin, and its arms were too long. No detail, just shadow. I couldn't make out a face, but I knew it was staring straight at me. I couldn't breathe. Not like metaphorically. I mean, I literally could not draw air. It felt like drowning in dry air, if that makes any sense. My body was on fire from the inside. My eyes, my lungs, my spine. Everything just locked. The cat didn't move. Then, without warning, the thing leaned over me, slow, like it was testing me, and hovered inches from my face. I could hear it breathing, slow, dry, almost rattling. Like it didn't have lungs, just hollow tubes inside. I could feel its breath on my face, and the cat let out the most blood-curdling scream I've ever heard. Not a hiss, not a meow. A full-on shriek like a dying animal. It charged forward and jumped through the shadow thing. Right then, I jolted awake. I shot up, gasping like I'd been held underwater. My shirt was soaked in sweat. My muscles were sore like I'd been seizing. I stumbled out of bed and just stood there, staring at the closet door. It was closed again. No wind, no draft, no cat. But here's the thing that still keeps me up now. Months later, there were claw marks, 5 fresh, deep ones etched across the wood of my nightstand. Diagonal, clean, like something had just sharpened its nails there. I don't sleep in that bed anymore. I moved my mattress to the living room floor, away from the closet. It's stupid, I know that. But I haven't seen the cat since that night. Not once. Story 9. People laugh when I bring it up now, but I swear I didn't imagine what I saw. And my mom, who's usually pretty level-headed, backs it up, though she won't talk about it unless she's had a few drinks. I grew up hearing the story from her. We live out in the South. Small town, nothing much around but cattle fences, long stretches of road and houses spaced out like someone dropped them from a helicopter at random. Mom was raised even farther out in the country, in this one-level house her parents built near a dried-up creek bed. Her dad was in the Army, gone most of the year. Her mom took care of the house and raised 3 daughters, my mom being the middle one. They had goats and chickens and a couple of dogs that barked at every damn shadow. And then there were the cats. 2 of them, both barn cats that hung around for scraps and kept the mice down. One was this big, gray, long-haired thing, scraggly and mean as hell. My mom's youngest sister, Carrie, was obsessed with that cat, even though it hated being touched. It had this stumpy tail, well, not really stumpy, just missing the last couple inches, like it had been chopped off. Anyway, one day the cat disappears. Carrie's in pieces over it, cries herself sick. They looked everywhere, under the porch, in the barn, out by the woods behind the house. But it was gone. That wasn't weird in itself. Country cats go missing all the time. Hawks, coyotes, or they just wander off and never come back. But then this thing happens. The thing my mom still can't explain. She said it was about a week after the cat vanished. She was doing dishes at the sink around sunset, the kind of light that makes everything look soft and a little off, when she caught something moving in the backyard. There was a man walking across the field. She said that was the first thing that hit her, how wrong it looked. Nobody walked across their land. The house sat way off the road, and they didn't have neighbors close enough to wander over. Plus, you didn't just walk through someone's backyard out there. People had guns. Trespassing wasn't a joke. She called out for her mom but didn't take her eyes off the man. He was tall and real thin, like bony thin, and wore a coat that looked too heavy for how warm it was. But the part that made her stomach drop? He was carrying the cat, the gray one. The same damn cat they'd buried 2 days earlier after the dogs dragged something up from the woods. They hadn't told Carrie, just told her the cat must have run off. But Mom had helped dig the hole. She'd seen what the dogs had dragged up. It was rotting and the head was crushed, but it had that same long gray fur and the tip of the tail was gone. Yet here it was, dangling from the man's arms. She said it wasn't limp either. It was twitching, like it was alive. She screamed for her mom again and backed away from the window. Her mom, my grandma, came running in, saw how pale she was and didn't even ask. She just followed her outside. But the man was gone, completely gone. There was nothing but flat yard and the chicken coop and the rusted swing set. Not even a sound. And my grandma was the type to start yelling at anyone who even looked like they were thinking of trespassing. She stormed out past the coop and into the edge of the woods, but nothing. No man, no footprints, no cat. My mom swore there was no way he could have run out of sight in the time it took for her and Grandma to get outside. It wasn't like he ducked behind a tree or something. The yard was wide open, flat, no cover. She told Grandma exactly what she saw. Grandma told her not to tell Carrie, and that was the end of the conversation. But my mom said she didn't sleep right for weeks after that. Anytime she looked out the window and saw a shadow move, her stomach would flip. She started locking her bedroom door, even though nobody else in the house ever did that. Years later, she told me this story like it was just something strange she remembered. But I could tell by the way her eyes went distant while she talked that it still bothered her. I used to think she might have dreamed it. Or maybe she saw some drifter walking by with a stray that looked like their cat. That's the kind of story people make up to cope with grief, right? But there's one detail that stuck with me. She said the man never looked at her, not once. He just walked, slow, like he was sleepwalking or floating almost. But the cat, that thing stared straight into her eyes, head twisted backward, mouth open but not making a sound. Just dead eyes locked on hers until the man passed out of view. I've heard all sorts of folklore since then. Stories about spirits taking the form of animals, or ghosts returning with something unfinished. I don't know what that was. I really don't. But I believe she saw something that wasn't supposed to be there. And the weirdest part? Years later, when my mom was packing up her childhood home before it got sold, she let Carrie go through some old boxes in the attic. In one of them was a picture she didn't remember taking. An old Polaroid, faded but clear enough. It was the backyard, taken from the kitchen window. And in the middle of the yard, just barely visible in the grainy light, was a figure. Long coat, tall, thin, and in his arms, something gray and furry, with a missing tip of the tail. Mom burned the photo. I asked her why, and she just said, "I already buried that cat once. I'm not doing it again." I don't think Carrie ever knew the truth. Story 10. I live just outside Helena, Montana, out where the cell service dies and the pine trees eat the sky. It's quiet mostly, darker than you'd expect after 9 p.m. The kind of dark that presses against your windshield and makes your headlights look weak. I work construction. Long hours, long drives. I was coming home late one Tuesday night, early fall, just cold enough for your breath to fog up the inside of the windows if the heater wasn't blasting. The job site had been a few towns over, so I was about an hour from home when it happened. I was on Highway 279, that stretch between the lake and the cattle ranches, where you don't see houses for miles. It wasn't storming, no rain, just still. Dead still. Not even wind moving the grass. I was doing maybe 60. The road was empty except for one car ahead of me, maybe 100 feet or so. Not close. We were just two headlights cutting through the dark. Then it came out of nowhere. It looked like a fog at first, a tannish, almost yellow mist, but tight, like it had a shape. I don't even know how to describe this properly. It didn't float like mist and it didn't run like an animal. It bounced. Not like how a deer bounds, more like a puppet, like someone yanking it forward on a string. My stomach dropped the second I saw it. It shot across the road in front of the car ahead of me, and they slammed their brakes, hard. Their back ends swerved just a little before they straightened out. That's when I knew I wasn't hallucinating. It had a head, legs, I think. The only reason I even considered calling it deer-shaped was because it was about the right height. But the edges weren't solid. It looked half-made, like something trying to become a deer and not getting it right. And then it was gone. 1 second it was bouncing across the road. The next it had vanished into the trees. I slowed down, not stopped, but slow enough to pass where it had gone in. My high beams were up, and I leaned forward like that was going to help me see better. There was nothing there. No tracks in the dirt, no branches moving. The brush wasn't disturbed at all, just stillness. A kind of wrong stillness, like the woods were holding their breath. The car ahead of me didn't stop either. They tapped the brakes a couple more times, then kept going. I don't blame them. I kept driving too. But my mind was racing. I tried to explain it away. Maybe a trick of the light, an optical illusion, heat distortion. But it was cold out, and there was no fog, and we both saw it. That should have been the end of it, right? I wish it was. About a mile down the road, I passed a small pull-off, and I saw someone standing there. Just standing at the edge of the woods, alone. I caught a glimpse of them in my headlights, just a flash. But I swear to God, they weren't wearing any shoes. Their feet were bare, right there on the gravel. No flashlight, no car, no phone. Just standing there like they'd walked out of the forest. I didn't stop. I didn't even slow down. I just kept driving like the road behind me didn't exist. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept thinking about how that thing had moved, like it was being yanked across the road by something that didn't understand how a living thing is supposed to move. The next day, I brought it up to a guy at work. Clint. He's older. Real old school Montana. Grew up out here. I didn't even get halfway through the story before his face went stiff. He said, "You ever hear of the Akari?" I hadn't. He told me it's from native stories, kind of a spirit, kind of a disease bringer. Usually shows up as a child or an animal, not quite right in shape. Always pale, always sudden. I laughed it off, said something like, "So I saw a spooky ghost deer, and now I'm cursed?" But he didn't laugh. He just said, "Don't mock it. If it showed itself to you, you were supposed to see it." I didn't respond to that. The next few nights, I kept my lights on in the house. I started locking the bedroom door, even though I live alone. I'd wake up to sounds, tapping on the window like tiny rocks. But every time I got up to check, there was nothing. It never came back. Not that thing. But something changed in the air around here. It's like whatever that was didn't want to be seen. Like we caught it in the act of, I don't know what. Crossing through, testing the boundary. I went back to that spot on the highway a week later, in the daylight. There was a dent in the guardrail right where the other car had slammed the brakes. The gravel was still kicked up on the shoulder, but the woods were just woods, peaceful, deceptive. I didn't go in. I've driven that road dozens of times since. Never saw it again. Thanks for watching. Don't leave before leaving a like to this video. Also hit the subscribe button to support my work. And as always, have a horrific nightmare, my dear.